well-written report is that it has to be complete and self-explanatory. All the steps, all the procedures are required to be there within that report. And secondly, all the points should be there which are like providing the explanation of what points have been covered in past, in the previous sections, and what is about to come ahead, so that you may not be asked in future that why have you written this, what do you mean by it? So it should be self-explanatory. Point number 2. The next is basically keeping it comprehensive yet compact. When I say complete, I also mean comprehensive, but when we say compact, compact is moving towards or pointing towards the 7 C's of communication that we shall be studying in the upcoming lectures. But one C of communication is conciseness. Conciseness is a quality of mentioning a thing but with brevity. Talking to the point. You make your point clear but with a limited use of words. So the same thing is expected from you within a report, because it has to be read within a very short span of time, so that you have to focus on providing more information within short space, and that is done basically by a good and a limited use of words. So this becomes your point number 3. And basically the last is once again coming towards your efficient presentation. So the written presentation as well as your visual presentation, both should be very effective, and that is how you basically develop a well-written report. Now if I ask you regarding all the features of a well-written report, even you would be able to tell me that this is going to be the point number 1, that your mind should be clear, then you will move ahead, and when the actual process of report writing begins, you will say that I have to provide all the complete information and in a manner that all the sections are self-explanatory. Then the next thing to consider is conciseness. We talked about it, that you have to provide all the information but keeping it compact. And the last thing to consider would be the presentation of all the information that you have provided within that report. So clarity, completeness, conciseness and presentation would become the ultimate features of a well-written report. Now talking about essay, why have I written here that report versus essay? Why is this so important that we have to do this comparison? Well, the basic reason of putting it here is that right from our earlier classes, this is the question that we get, and this is basically the mode of writing that we are taught from our earlier classes, the form of an essay. This is more or less more journal, more oriented towards the kind of points which I have written over here, that it's related to argumentation, reasoning and logical conclusion. Essay is more or less related towards these factors. But as you move ahead and you become part of a professional life, it is expected from you to be more specific rather than being more general. And to make your writing more particular, you have to organize it into a compact form. So we can call it as a deductive approach, moving from general to specific, becoming more particular. But this is something to be expected from you, and that is how you have to mold and tilt your mind from being more general towards being more specific. And that is how basically I compared, so that you may know how you used to think and how you are expected to think, how you need to change your mental thinking, so that when the time comes of writing, you may know how to use different strategies for preparing a report. So in case of your report, this is the point to remember, that reports are basically business oriented. These are to be used within a business setting. Then you can say that these are basically used within a scientific and technical subject related environment. Your subject matters are usually science and technology, engineering, business, management. So these are the subjects within which you are expected to use the report writing format, and of course in workplaces. This is also another point to remember, and all three together form the essential components of the report writing process. Whereas in case of your essays, the focus lies towards argumentation, how good you are in arguing, how you're able to present your thesis statement, and how do you support it with some good evidence. So this is the test of your argumentative skills. How do you reason with your audience, with your readers? So this basically becomes the focus, and gradually based on that argumentation, moving towards the logical conclusion is something like the part of an essay. Although there are some similarities as well, from where you can start, of course, the actual process of learning the report writing process, but gradually you need to identify the differences as well that you need to keep in mind while preparing the actual report. If we start from the similarities, we should of course begin with an introduction. In both cases we have an introduction, as you will be studying within the structure of a report. An introduction, you need to have a body, you need to have a solid conclusion, and that conclusion should be based on some analytical thinking as well. Then of course you need to have a formal style. A style has to be there of course within the essay, but it's more generic, whereas it becomes more specific and technical, as you will see within the next section. But however, focusing on the similarities, you need to have a formal style, and after drafting your text and your content, then comes the stage of careful proofreading, and then the last thing of course is the overall presentation, which becomes the most important point, I would say. This presentation has the big impact towards your reader, and these are some of the similarities which I would say you can have in case of the reports and essays. But when we move ahead, these are the things that you're going to develop gradually and steadily once we look into the detail of this report writing process. What is going to be different? Well, these are the points which should be remembered. In case of your report, this is the sample basically which I had for you, but in case of your report, you have to present your information in an impartial manner, just the way I mentioned. Impartial and objective manner. No use of I or we, just factual information. No need of argumentation, which is basically going to turn it into an essay. What's basically expected is that you are presenting the information. This is also another point to remember, that it is meant to be scanned quickly by the reader. Even I would say, not even scanning, but they may skim as well, just to have an idea what do you have for the readers. So you need to keep in mind that no one is going to look into the detail of what you have provided. In case of an essay, you basically provide your content in the form of different paragraphs, and within those paragraphs the reader has to look into the detail to find your basic point. But in case of a report, which is very well structured and organized into sections and subsections, they're going to simply skim most of the points to have an idea, and if they want to go into the detail, they may of course go into it, but they would have an idea which section to look upon because they're going to have the headings. So that is also a big difference which should be remembered. Then there is another point as well, that you use numbered headings and subheadings to of course organize your content. When we talk about the structure of a report, you're going to see that we use a decimal system within the table of contents when we prepare it, and the same table of content basically reflects your different sections and subsections, which are of course provided different numbers. So those numbers are basically highlighted here as numbered headings and subheadings, which is basically not the case in case of your essay writing. So over here we have numbered headings. Then another point to be remembered is that it uses short in very concise paragraphs and even dot points as well. By dot points I mean the use of bullets. You're going to see within that upcoming sample as well. So wherever applicable, you try to use the dot points, and alongside these dot points you try to provide paragraphs, the content within very concise short paragraphs, so that the reader may not have to go into much detail to find the basic point. You should try to provide it in the form of a heading. That is going to be more effective. If that is not possible, you try to provide it in the form of a dot point or a bullet, so that the reader knows this is the basic point that he or she wants to address. And then making it more effective is by the use of graphics wherever possible, and you have tables, graphs, illustration, and even you have charts, pie charts, histograms. There are many modes of using graphics, but that is going to have a big impact as well within your writing, which is not the case when we talk about an essay. So this is also something which discriminates a report from an essay. Then talking about another point is that it requires an abstract, which we call as the executive summary, as we will discuss in case of the structure of a report. But this executive summary also becomes an essential component because it highlights almost everything what the whole report is about and becomes the focus of your managerial readers as well. And of course it's followed by some recommendation as well. Another important point. So you can just simply base these differences on the organization of your content. Just come to the very first slide, which was about a structured form of writing, identifying a problem, examining into it detail, and then organizing it into a well-structured body report. So this is the basic point to remember, that you can simply achieve all these differences if you remember the first point, which is of the skeletal system that you get using headings and subheadings. This is the sample here for you. As you can see over here, the first page giving you a background. Then you can see the use of headings and subheadings. Then you can also see the use of bullets to highlight all the facts and figures. Here you can see the use of facts and figures. If you want me to circle these with another color to identify, this is the use of facts and figures. Just look at the manner in which information is being provided, and some additional information is being provided on a separate site. But look at the overall presentation. I want you to focus on providing an overview, a division into sections, then providing facts and figures, and also the use of these bullets. And this is the thing which matters and turns it into a good report. Now look over here, we have a graph as well, a table as well. So all these things together are forming that structure of a report that we have discussed in detail. So now you can move ahead and simply move towards the conclusion. Gradually we are moving towards the conclusion, but we have to sum up some good qualities of a report. What are the points which are required to be considered when we talk about writing a good report? So now it is time to sum up our discussion by just having a review of all the qualities of a good report. And now if you look at it, it begins with the clarity of your mind. Once your mind is clear, then you can move towards the definition of different concepts that you are going to use within your report. You should be clear about the different concepts, and those concepts are required to be explained to your readers as well. That is how you are going to connect these 2 points with one another. The third point can also be related by the careful use of different terminologies that you want to make part of your report. Then what your good report does is that it clarifies a problem. Because this is what we do in case of report writing process. We are provided with a problem, we need to identify and examine it in detail and then move towards a solution and then proposing it with some suggestions and recommendations. So this is also one part of it, that you have to clarify a problem. The next thing is not just the clarification of a problem, but it has to be done in a presentable manner. If you have good presentation, only then you'll be able to convince your audience. Therefore, presentation also matters. Then it needs to have the proper organization as well. And that proper organization basically comes by having different sections like 1.1, you can have 1.2. In a similar way, in case of your next chapter, you can have 2.1, 2.2. But that is how you divide your different sections. And this division of sections is going to have a big impact on your audience. So this proper organization leads to the inclusion of data. The data has to be provided in a statistical form, because that is going to become the factual information and the evidence that you would be supporting till the end. And based on that factual information, providing some solutions and recommendations. So data has to be there. The next factor also becomes very important based on those completeness and conciseness that I talked about. You have to keep it very short and compact so that more information can be collected and gained within a short span of time by your target audience. Therefore, it has to be short and compact. And then you can also say that it has to be authentic. How do you make it authentic? On one hand, with your own loyalty, dedication, commitment, you can make it an authentic work. The second thing you can do is that within your discussion, of course, you can cite some credible authors. So develop a link between the overall circle, that the following problem has been identified and worked upon by some other researchers as well, and I am going to take it to the next level. So this linkage is going to make it more credible and authentic. And that is how you can connect it with the last point as well, that the proper citation and bibliography is going to make it more authentic and reliable. And these are some of the qualities of a good report. You'll be able to understand it even better within the upcoming lectures. But to talk about our today's lecture, and we have talked about the qualities of a good report. Now you just know that you have to talk about clarity, you have to maintain clarity, then you have to define all the contexts, then you have to use all the different terminologies very carefully, then you have to identify and clarify a problem, you have to present it in a good form, then you have to properly organize all the information, then you have to provide some evidence as well, and then writing it in a very short and compact form, and then maintaining it very authentic and reliable by careful citation and bibliography.
Let's have a quick overview of what you have studied today. How are you going to define a report? The first step begins with the identification of a problem, followed by its detailed examination, and finally organizing your report. When writing a report, you need to be sure about its purpose. You should have a clear understanding of why a report is written. A written purpose sentence is essential for your report. This purpose sentence could be written as either a statement or a question. You may either provide information, initiate a discussion, persuade the readers, or influence the audience. If we talk about the characteristics of a report has to be short, and by short, you need limited use of words depending upon the type of the report. Sharpness is to stay to the point when drafting your report. Be concise and brief while composing it. Your report has to be well structured, meaning that the content should be properly organized. It should have independent sections, meaning that each section stands on its own. The report has to be comprehensive in terms of subject matter but compact at the same time. A report may identify a problem in your organization, analyze a certain situation, or evaluate a subject matter. There is a sharp contrast between a report and an essay. An essay is generally based on arguments and reasoning. Instead, a report is factual based on certain facts and figures. In the end of the lecture, we discuss certain qualities of a good report. First, you need to bring clarity in your thoughts. The purpose and idea of your report must be very clear. The content should be properly organized, divided into sections and subsections. Bibliography section comes in the end to provide details of all the cited sources with standard referencing style. It is necessary to include the data in order to make your report reliable and authentic by supporting it with accurate facts and figures.
And therefore I can say we have reached to the conclusion of our today's lecture. I am hopeful and I am very sure that you know all the basics of a report, its characteristics, the expectations and the purpose of the report writing process, its significance, its relevance and attributes and features of a good report. Then we had a good discussion to realize how it is similar to an essay, and then how we can make it different to turn it into a report, and with some minor examples to give you an idea how it appears. But it's going to vary as well when we move ahead in the upcoming lectures, where we will be discussing different types of report right after understanding the basic structure of a report. But for in today's lecture, but for now, I would say that this information itself is very comprehensive, very much complete in itself. Just look into it in detail. There is much more to learn. If you want to look into the detail, you can also Google some ideas as well. But hopefully my lecture would have given you a good idea what basically report is and why is it important. Thank you very much.